A new world order is coming and the next few decades are going to be full of chaos. Now, we have been living in an extended period of peace, low inflation and energy abundance. But in 2022, all that has changed and we need to understand why. Before the conflict in Europe, the majority of people had food on the table and gas in the tank. America alone enjoyed 40 years of low inflation, well below 5%. And this is because the planet was powered by globalization. And they gave birth to two alliances that effectively ruled the world. Now, the first was between China and America, known as Chimerica, and the second was a partnership between Europe and Russia called Eurasia. And for a long time, this model worked wonders and subsidized the world, allowing us to live well beyond our means without paying the price. And according to Zoltan Pozsar from Credit Suisse, both unions were heavenly matched. The EU paid euros for cheap Russian gas, the US paid US dollars for cheap Chinese imports, and Russia and China dutifully recycled their earnings into G7 claims. And it's because both sides were making so much money together that no one wanted to rock the boat. So this was the situation. We had Russia getting rich selling cheap gas to Europe, while EU countries like Germany, they use this cheap gas to manufacture and sell expensive stuff to the rest of the world, also allowing them to become filthy rich, while China used their army of cheap labor to sell cheap stuff to America, subsidizing the United States while scooping up trillions of American dollars in the process. Now, this created a low inflation environment for the United States, but more importantly, allowed America to print money and export their inflation across the world to grow their economy at an astounding rate. Quantitative easing is an American product. But all this is going to change because these old alliances are breaking apart. China and America today hate each other and Russia no longer trusts Europe. And once this trust is lost, trade partnerships are impossible and this economic war is only going to accelerate. Now, trust was lost the moment America imposed financial sanctions on Russia and froze their money. And now this has escalated to the point where Chinese technology and Russian commodities are also being sanctioned by the West. This is why China and Russia, they are banding together. As Zoltan states, we have a special relationship between Russia and China, the core economics of the BRICS bloc, a new heavenly match forced from the divorce of Chimerica and Eurasia. The world's commodity powerhouse and the biggest production giant are now working together, and this is bad news for the West. We are moving towards a multipolar world and there's almost nothing that can stop this. We are at the beginning of deglobalization. But Zoltan further highlights a bigger concern of this new world order. Many countries that have been sanctioned by the United States are coming together to form a bigger alliance. This includes Turkey, Russia, Iran, and China, and even North Korea. And they aren't just cooperating financially, they are conducting military exercises together. For example, Russia is holding the Vostok 2022 drills with countries including India and China, showing a new united front to America and its allies, at least on paper. But the true fight probably isn't going to be fought in a military battle. This is going to be a financial one, and the BRICS nations are now flexing their true strength and perhaps the only key advantage they have in this financial war, and we are talking about commodities. You see, right now, America's greatest weapon is the US dollar. It is still a powerful weapon, and in 1971, President Nixon's Secretary of State called it, "The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem." Basically, he means that the world is so reliant on the dollar that if the Federal Reserve hikes rates, every other central bank in the world has to react or face a currency devaluation that can spiral into a crisis. And that's why we have so many emerging markets like Sri Lanka and Pakistan facing currency troubles. In fact, 36 currencies today have lost at least 10% of their value in 2022. That is terrifying. However, the Eastern Alliance is now weaponizing commodities. It's becoming our commodities, your problem, and it's becoming a tit-for-tat strategy. We just need to look at the incoming oil price cap on Russian oil from the G7. The West is trying to dictate the price of Russian oil to cut away their remaining source of revenue, and almost immediately, Gazprom shut off Nord Stream 1 pipeline indefinitely, denying Europe their gas supply as winter approaches. It's really becoming a financial war, and the weapons today are not missiles or bullets, but dollars and commodities. And this means we might have to adjust to a new reality where countries like Russia can constrict the supply of commodities at any point. Inflation is going to stay elevated thanks to a lasting supply side problem, something that the Federal Reserve cannot solve. So it might be impossible to return to the good old days of 2% inflation. And what we are seeing today is a consequence of the big powers losing trust with each other. Everyone now is trying to inflict pain on the other side while protecting their own self-interest. Now, the lack of commodities is a big problem for Europe, but what America truly fears is China becoming too powerful. Specifically, they want to prevent China from accelerating their technology because it will upset the balance of power. China's recent military drills and exercises around Taiwan has reminded America of a clear and present danger. Your chip manufacturer is in our backyard, and America knows this. The next battlefront will be one about supply chains, because it doesn't matter if Taiwan manufactures a billion semiconductor chips, right? If it can't reach America thanks to a Chinese blockade, it is as good as useless. In fact, the US Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo mentioned that America buys 70% of its most sophisticated chips from Taiwan. Those are chips that are needed for military hardware like Javelin missiles. And this is why America is scrambling to sanction China when it comes to microchips. For example, they ordered Nvidia and AMD to stop selling AI chips to China and are trying to slow down China's progress in microchip production. The US has also banned ASML from selling China DUV lithography machines, an essential tool needed to manufacture those advanced chips. According to Zoltan, America is trying to invert time using technology sanctions, but that's only one side of the coin. The US is also trying to bring chip manufacturing back to the country. In July 2022, Congress passed the CHIPS Act that included a $39 billion provisions and grants to revive the semiconductor industry to fight against China. America understands how ugly things can get if they can't leverage a global supply chain and a chip manufacturing base to protect its economy. We can already see a new multipolar world forming with new centers of power where technologies and commodities are not going to be shared around. Countries have to become more self-reliant. Now, to understand how we should approach investing in this changing world order, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of both the establishment and the new rising alliance. We need to think about how America is going to protect their self-interest and how China and Russia are going to challenge the existing system. Now, the greatest weakness the West has is a lack of energy security and manufacturing capability. And Zoltan has highlighted 4 things America has to do to get back on track. We are talking about trillions of dollars flowing into these sectors. Now, the first is to rearm, and that means spending more money on weapons and beefing up their military. The West has to be able to defend the existing world order. And this means there'll be more defense spending coming, especially if the Republicans take over the White House. Now, the second move America needs to make is to reshore their manufacturing capability, especially microchip technology. It is dangerous to rely on hardware not just from China, but also from their allies like Taiwan and South Korea as well. As Zoltan says, friendshoring won't work, as stuff from France will have to sail through the straits, and what's the point of friendshoring if the straits can be subject to blockades? So we can expect a lot of money to pour into American manufacturing, especially the semiconductor industry. Now, the third move is restocking of commodities. We are already seeing a mad scramble in Europe to fill up their gas storage tanks or freeze during winter. America also has to stock back up on their commodities, especially the strategic petroleum reserves. So we know that the reserves has been draining away because of this energy crisis and high prices at the pump. And we can see a shocking drop from a peak of 726 million barrels back in 2011 to less than 450 million barrels in August this year. And when America restocks, they are going to have to buy oil at elevated prices, pushing it up even higher. And it won't just be oil and food. We can expect America to also start stockpiling other essential commodities like rare earths and lithium. Now, finally, The fourth move is to rewire the electricity grid, and this means the push for renewable energy like solar and wind power is going to accelerate. The West no longer wants to rely solely on Russia or even Saudi Arabia for their oil and gas. And to accomplish this, a lot of materials are going to be needed, especially silver. And as we can see, all this rearming of American industries is going to need two things: a ton of commodities and capital. And it doesn't matter how high interest rates are, the US government has to raise the money by either borrowing from private investors or getting the Fed to print money. Come hell or high water, executing the to-do list is imperative. Industrial sovereignty depends on it, and it doesn't matter if interest rates are 3.5% or 7%. Money is needed. So what does this mean? A new commodity super cycle is going to come sooner or later. Plus, we will see America get deeper into debt or print even more money to fund this rearmament. The West has no choice if they want to remain a global power, and because of this, we can expect inflation to stay elevated. But Zoltan also tells us that this new alliance in the East isn't going to just sit around and do nothing. They are going to consolidate and work together to challenge the hegemon of the world, which is still the United States today. Because America is going to rebuild itself and they need money, Zoltan believes that the East, especially China, will no longer lend money to the West. Because if they do, they are effectively funding their own downfall. So what does this mean? Well, China is going to start dumping even more US treasuries. By reducing their dollar holdings, they are preventing their money from being frozen, but also making it much more expensive for the United States to rearm. In fact, China's treasury holdings dropped below $970 billion in June. They are aggressively selling off their US bonds. Remember, when you start dumping treasuries, bond prices go down and yields go up. So America will find it more expensive to borrow money. And that means we'll be living in a world of higher interest rates and high inflation as well. A combo of these two bad things. And that might become the new economic conditions in tomorrow's world order. The good old days might be forever gone. So defunding America might be a financial strategy the East will employ, but that's not all. Even if China and Russia have tons of commodities and manufacturing power, they lack the financial network that the US dollar provides America. And this is why I believe they're going to accelerate bilateral trade with the rest of the world, starting with key trading partners like India and Iran. In fact, Russia and Iran are discussing an alliance involving grain, drones, and satellites. It's nothing big, but it's still accelerating. However, the real threat to the West is how the BRICS countries are now trying to establish their own gold exchanges to facilitate the true price discovery of gold. We have India launching their own gold exchange, and now Russia is seriously considering establishing their own gold standard, fixing the prices of precious metals to the new BRICS currency. And this is big news because it will help circulate the new currency around the world as countries really start to use the new exchanges. And it also helps to revalue their enormous gold stockpile, making them even richer than before. And I believe down the line, precious metals, especially gold, will play a big part in this new world order, especially with the rise of commodity currencies. I don't think a classical gold standard will come back, but I won't be surprised if gold will be used to back up the new reserve currency. So the world today is shifting under our feet. New alliances are forming and they are all going to try and be at the center of this new world order. We will see Western nations scramble to rebuild and defend the existing order. They will focus on bringing back manufacturing while securing their supply chains and energy needs. While the Eastern Alliance is going to try and convince the rest of the world to de-dollarize, they're going to do this by using the power of their commodities and promote bilateral trade. And we need to be mentally prepared for a period of high inflation and high interest rates. We can expect central banks to diversify more out of dollars into other currencies and gold. No one knows how this will truly play out, but I want us to really understand this. Commodity currencies will rise and hard assets will eventually become harder to purchase. So as this market crashes, consider picking up real assets and commodities. Doesn't matter if it's gold, silver or real estate. Just get something that can't be debased by all this chaos. And if Zoltan's thesis is right, the best investment sectors in the future might be in weapon manufacturing and technology hardware. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Will America and Europe successfully defend the established order, or will China and Russia manage to create a multipolar world? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.